What is going on, everybody? We are back for another episode of Tornado Tag on a special election day. So we're going to be
I think it's time to make a call. Minnesota goes to the body, Monsoon.
Yep, we are going to be doing Jesse the Body Ventura today because he's a pro wrestler who crossed those political lines, and he was the governor of not California.
No, that was Schwarzenegger. They were in a movie together once. They were in a movie
together, yeah. Huge thank you to Anastasia for becoming a member to the channel. It doesn't tell me what tier you picked, so thank you. And then we got a whole bunch of love in the chat with the members using their fun emojis. So that's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So I have election coverage going on right here on my screen. Also loves all conspiracies, not just 9/11 conspiracies. Jesse the Body, he's into all that stuff.
They call them red states because they're covered in thermite.
Yeah. He has special clearances. He can get into cleared areas because he's a Navy SEAL and he was once a governor, so he gets access and he knows
also
things.
Also a mayor.
Yeah.
People always.
But now he lives off the grid in Mexico.
Yeah. He's one of those. Yeah. I wonder if he was just one of those guys that actually did it when they say, "Oh, if the candidate I don't like wins, I'm leaving the country," and then they actually did.
Yeah. He's like, I'm out of here. But so we'll try to keep political talk as much as we. It's election night. We'll talk whatever we want to. I despise all politicians are corrupt. I agree. I totally agree. It's not looking good. It's not looking good tonight. Yeah, it looks like we're gonna have 4 years of pretty interesting stuff. But so BP, current day wrestling stuff. If anything catching your eye, any news out there or anything going on?
Well, we had Crown Jewel. Crown Jewel was the big premium live event over the weekend.
Did you watch it?
I did not. I totally forgot it was on. I thought it was on later for some reason. By the time it was on, I realized it was on. I would have been like halfway through the Cody Gunther match, which I should probably go back and watch. I'm sure it was good. But those shows always feel like kind of non-canon to me, even though I know they do some storyline stuff. They'll do title changes here and there, but this one is like, oh yeah, the winners get this gigantic title, which by the way is staying in Saudi Arabia, and isn't moving along with them, and then it's just a strange show usually, and not just because of the whole political stuff surrounding them being in Saudi Arabia, just because they try to load the cards but load them in a way where it doesn't really have much bearing on the rest of stuff that's going on in WWE, which is always very strange. So then there's the whole issue of releases too. Well, not fully releases, but we also had some things where they were letting a few people go, and then there were other people, one other person where they weren't fired, but they weren't renewing their contracts. So it looks like they did release Indy Hartwell and Tegan Knox, and they have told Baron Corbin that his contract will not be renewed when it expires I believe in 90 days.
Yeah. Did you see someone said that they dropped the ball on Baron Corbin and he tweeted back, I agree. I was like,
Baron Corbin was in a weird spot. Because he was in NXT at a point where it was very difficult for you to get over in NXT if you were not a Ring of Honor guy, or not just a Ring of Honor guy, but like an indie darling, or a guy who was a star in TNA. He was one of those guys where he was kind of the prototype for what they do now. He was a football player. He was a guy who had a lot of issue or a lot of potential, but it just wasn't the right time for him. Where if he came in, if he was, in his 20s now, if he was coming out of the NFL now, when the pipeline is primarily football players, shot putters, gymnasts, and things like that, I think he would have had a better time acclimating to this WWE. And he was one of those guys where the quote unquote smart crowd was never going to get behind him because he was never like that indie darling. He wasn't like this Bryan Danielson type worker, but I always thought he was a very effective heel. And yeah, I think they definitely could. He's a guy who, no matter what kind of garbage they threw at him, he did his best to get it over. He was a decent wrestler, and yeah, he did have a few pay-per-view main events with Seth Rollins, and that was kind of the peak there. He had a good run with Roman for a little bit, but it was when the booking was at its absolute worst. He was also a guy, when he was a focal point, it was when the booking was really bad. Like,
yeah,
really.
I thought he was someone that a lot of people looked at very highly in the company.
You would always hear that.
Yeah, but I feel like also like he may have lost a lot of favor when Damian Priest popped up, because they were both like the same size and can do the same things, except Priest had maybe a better look.
Yeah, and Corbin, there may have been that perception like, oh, he's already had his run, he's already had his opportunity, he already had a shot.
Absolutely. Sorry, busy day at work. Indy Hartwell, I can kind of see tons of injuries. I think tore her knee like 2 or 3 times.
That was Tegan Knox.
Tegan Knox. Yeah, a lot of injuries there. So I can see like the upside to her is like, she comes back and then she's hurting her knee again. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, I know she had the one injury in the Mae Young Classic when there were reports. I don't know if this was ever something they substantiated. I doubt they would ever say, yeah, that was the plan. But there were reports that the plan for her was to win the second Mae Young Classic. And she tore up her knee in the quarterfinals, and they had to call the audible and go with Toni Storm. And now they're both out of the company. So she's somebody that could very well, no pun intended, land on her feet. Even with the injury history, hopefully her knee is fine. And the 2 ACL injuries. And I think it's also with her and Indy, I think it's also an issue of they realize that they have a locked and loaded women's division right now. You already have a lot of deep talent. You have Rhea, you have Bailey, you have Io Sky, you have Kairi Sane, Asuka will be coming back from injury soon. You have Bianca Belair, you have all these people, and then in NXT you have Julia, you have
NXT stacked.
Stephanie Vaquer, you have Roxanne, you have just a ton of top people there. Everybody, the fact that they're going to sign Jordan Grace when her TNA contract is up is the worst kept secret in wrestling.
Yep.
And who knows if they could very well say, hey, you know what, we're going to raid Stardom, we're going to take more of their people, or it's one of those things where they could be looking to aggressively acquire for their women's division. If you're going to do that, you have to cut some people.
Yeah. Indy, I'm shocked with. I thought Indy was really, really good.
I liked Indy a lot.
So do I. I think the only problem with Indy is I think her and JC Jade look exactly alike. Like I think if you put them in the room together, I think not JC. JC's the one on NXT.
JC Jane?
Isn't it JC Jade?
No.
Am I wrong with that name?
Cora Jade?
No, hold on. I got you.
I believe Indy is Aboriginal. And JC Jane is Caucasian.
I think they have a very, very similar look. Hold on. I hope I'm not saying her name wrong. That would be terrible.
Well, there's a Cora Jade and a JC Jane.
JC Jane, I think I'm talking about.
JC Jane kind of looks like Britt Baker.
No, I think JC Jade looks like yeah, now I'm getting the names thing. But yeah, I think they look super similar. I'm a fan of her though. Like I'm shocked they got rid of her, but in the chat they said I'm surprised they didn't drop Raquel instead of Indy. Yeah, I would have, no disrespect to Raquel, but I would have definitely kept Indy over Raquel. This is me.
Yeah, well, Raquel's got size. Raquel is always going to, people with size, or even without Vince McMahon, they're always going to have a leg up, especially because that's her gimmick right now. She's going to be Liv's heater.
Yeah, and it sucks because like I feel like she's got her way to the top a couple times, and every time she gets to the very top, it just doesn't work out for her. And I feel like out of all the muscle bound powerhouse women on the roster, I feel like she's the least excited. Like the fans are least behind her. Over like your Rhea's, Bianca's, Jade's.
It's been a lot of stop and start with her. She's in a new position. I'm sure if they ever do a thing where she turns babyface on Liv, she'll get over with it. But she's probably going to get an opportunity to run with it. I did like it. I did have a soft spot for Indy Hartwell. I loved her interplay with Dexter Lumis. That was always fun.
Yeah.
And hopefully she lands on her feet. It's not being released from WWE is not the end of the road that it used to be. You can remake yourself. You can. Yeah, she would be great in a GCW. She would be great in a TNA.
TNA. Yeah, she should definitely look. TNA should definitely pick her up. If I'm TNA, I pick up Baron Corbin too.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hurt. Yeah, the only problem is you don't want to be. Oh, it's TNA. They pick up all the WWE.
I mean, they're already known for that anyway. No disrespect. I'm not saying anything negative. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I don't mean it maybe that way. But like the Hardy Boys, they wanted to be major players in AEW and wanted to dominate the tag team division. And AEW is like, you're not putting good matches on. We don't see the same vision you see. If you guys want to go, you can go. And they let them go. And then TNA's like, the Hardys, we'll take you. We have a young upcoming tag team that everyone seems to really like. You're dropping the titles to Matt Hardy. And then Matt Hardy, unfortunately, injures Chris Bay. You know what I mean? Like,
that's an unfortunate thing that happens in wrestling.
But I mean, like, if you've watched the last 2 years of the Hardy Boys, like, they didn't look amazing. They looked pretty reckless.
Yeah, I haven't really. I don't think there's any track record of them hurting anybody besides. Obviously,
no, not at all. But I'm just saying, it's like their days. They like their AEW run look like their days are behind them. And TNA brought them in and made them world champions. Just like they do with Bully, and they do with Tommy Dreamer and anyone else who talks on a microphone on Busted Open. Let's make them champions of TNA. And
Tommy Dreamer was
diminishes your.
Tommy Dreamer was the social media champion. I'm pretty sure if I asked nicely, I could become the social media champion.
But what I'm saying is I think TNA already has that stink of if you're a former WWE guy, you're going to make it here and we're going to disregard everything we work with our
definitely,
young talent.
Definitely now more that Scott D'Amore's not in the picture. I can see that.
Yeah.
But I also understand, hey, we need attention. We're a very small fish in a very big pond, and the Hardys have a lot of name recognition. I also understand that.
Yeah. Like, I don't mind Ziggler going over there because I think Ziggler can still be a world champion anywhere, and obviously he is. I think he's super talented, but like some of them might grab him like, man, you're sitting on like Chris and Ace and Speedball and all these really young, talented guys, and you're just like, yeah, I think Bully Ray should be our main event this week. It's like, are you high? Like, what are you fucking thinking?
They're thinking Bully Ray has name value. He might draw money.
And I just don't see it. I don't see it. But I'm also not the hardcore pay your money fan wrestling. You know what I mean? That's just not who I am. But so it is what it is. All right. It's been enough for that beginning banter. Let's get into the topic of the evening. Unless you have any other major things you want to cover.
I don't really have anything offhand that I can think of.
I have not really been watching modern day wrestling really. Like I'm not saying I'm not into it right now, but it's just I have other things going on, and I just don't really take time out to watch Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, and like I don't know. I'm not really into the storylines right now.
I caught bits and pieces of Raw. I believe Alexa Bliss came back. I know it was.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that was on TV or if it was a dark segment. I know they did a battle royal, but I was kind of half watching. I was working on something, but yeah, they
Alexa Bliss or is she spooky?
She's just Alexa Bliss. The spooky people kidnapped the Miz.
Oh boy. Last time Miz met spooky characters, didn't he blow his ACL out with a bunch of zombies?
Yeah, that was the infamous zombie match where him and was it him and Damian Priest or him and John Morrison or something? And the zombies ate him, and then he came back. That's like when John Cena went to the Phantom Zone.
Yeah. Yikes. Sorry, Miz. All right, let's get into it. Jesse, the Body Ventura.
And do you want to talk about somebody that's one of the old school like, sports entertainer types? No, he was maybe if you've no, he's doing just fine, the Body. Excuse me.
Alexa Bliss came back from the Baja.
I was a frogman. I found her underwater and went into a search and rescue mission monsoon. So that is
for 30 hours long. That's a Navy SEAL trick that we learn in the Baja.
So Jesse Ventura, believe it or not, that's not his real name. Even though he was able to run under it. I don't know if he changed his name legally or how that happened, but he was born James George Janos in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I apologize for yawning so much. I don't know why. I'm not tired. I don't know what's going on.
So he is, as you would think, from Minnesota. He is a born and raised Minnesota boy, where he would go on to his fame, and well, I guess his fortune was mostly outside of Minnesota, but his highest fame was probably being the governor there. And so sorry, I had a coughing spell like right before we got on here, and I can't shake it now. So yeah, we do have the whole military thing. That's a very big part of Ventura's early life. His parents were both in World War II. His mother was in the medical side of it, I believe. She became an anesthesiologist and worked in hospitals in and around Minneapolis. And Ventura himself was he was in a Vietnam vet. He was in Vietnam, but he did not see combat. He was in a non-combat role. And he was part of, I think there's always this controversy about him being a Navy SEAL. He was part of the underwater demolition team, which later evolved into the SEALs, but I believe it was a kind of, there's always been this little controversy. Was he a Navy SEAL? Was he not a Navy SEAL? But one thing he definitely was somebody who got really into bodybuilding. He wound up leaving Minnesota after coming back from the war, after getting discharged from the Navy. He winds up going to California, and he would dabble with biker gangs, according to him, but he never really got fully into them. And then he realized that this isn't the life for me. So he does go back to Minnesota, goes to college on the GI Bill, really gets into weightlifting and gets into karate. And this is like this is the 70s. This is when Bruce Lee is huge. This is when Chuck Norris is starting to make a name for himself. So this is the perfect time for somebody to really get into that whole thing. And he winds up becoming a bodyguard too. Worked a little bit for the Rolling Stones, worked a little bit for the Dead, did a lot of different things like that, and finds his way into professional wrestling. But even Jesse Ventura would admit he wasn't going to be confused with, I'm trying to think who the contemporary, like today you would say like, oh, you would never confuse him for Bryan Danielson or something like that. You would never confuse him for pick your favorite accomplished grappler. He was definitely more of a character. He was more of a, and this is before this word existed, sports entertainer. And like a lot of bleach blonde muscle guys in the 1970s, he took a lot of stuff from two guys. It's almost like that was by design, right? It's almost like that was planned.
It's almost like we planned it that way. Chat said, talking about the former governor on election day. Good evening, fellas. See Henry.
Yeah,
that was the goal. Yeah,
that was the goal. So he takes the name Jesse Ventura because of Ventura Beach, California. And he is modeling himself after Gorgeous George, like a lot of heels in the 70s did, especially the ones that were bleaching their hair and being kind of pompous. He even took, and this is something I've always associated with Jesse Ventura, but it was a Gorgeous Georgeism. Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat. That was a Jesse Venturaism from the from the early days that he kept on going through his days in WWF. And even though there was a little Gorgeous George there, like Hogan, like a lot of people, he borrowed very heavily from maybe, and this is a controversial thing to say, maybe the most influential wrestler of the 1970s, Superstar Billy Graham. Yeah. There's a lot of people who really lifted a bunch from Superstar Billy Graham.
Growing up, I seen Hogan obviously first, like Hulk Hogan is my introduction to wrestling. Mm-hmm. And then I went back and seen Jesse and Billy Graham, and I was like, these guys just look exactly like Hulk Hogan. Like, why'd they all rip off Hulk Hogan? And then I was like,
no, they all ripped off Billy. They all ripped off Graham.
Yeah.
And Graham was so like Graham, if he would have been a few years later, he would have been Hogan. He was a better talker than Hogan. So it's in the mid 70s that Ventura winds up becoming a wrestler. He winds up working for Don Owen in the Pacific Northwest territory. And he's the great Jesse the Great Ventura. Wound up teaming with Playboy Buddy Rose, wound up doing the loop there. They mainly would hide Jesse Ventura in tag teams because, again, his ring work left a lot to be desired. He was by no one's estimation a good bell-to-bell wrestler. He was the epitome of sometimes the goddamn bell's gonna ring. But he was so charismatic and was so good at getting heat. He still got over. But he still got over. Everywhere he went, he got over. And he did spend a lot of his time as an active wrestler in his home territory of the AWA. Excuse me, I think I might be getting sick. And I know the great week for it, huh?
Yeah.
So AWA is where he gets the nickname that he's going to be kind of saddled with for his entire career. He tried to get it changed to the Mind later on as a politician, but I don't think it ever stuck. This is where he becomes Jesse the Body Ventura.
The Body.
I'm the Body. I feel like I have something stuck in my throat and I can't get it out. I'm so sorry.
Get it out of you. Do you have a drink?
I finished it already. So it's in the AWA where, again, he is primarily a tag team wrestler, and he winds up forming one of the great AWA tag teams of the late 70s, early 80s, the East-West Connection, with him purportedly being from the East Coast or the West Coast. Although he does not sound like he's from California. If you just kind of listen to it, he has that, it's Minnesota, but it's Minnesota like this, Monsoon.
Yeah.
And this is not the Adrian Adonis that you remember from late in his run of the WWF, where he's in a dress and wearing pink trunks and wearing makeup and he's hosting the flower shop. This is the badass biker Adrian Adonis, who is kind of a serious threat.
Now, when I say this, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, but obviously Adrian Adonis was trying to look more effeminate and maybe like a gayer character. I thought he looked gayer as a biker than he did as Adrian Adonis.
Okay. All right.
I'm just gonna be honest. He went from feminine to leather daddy. Like I
went the opposite way. He went from leather daddy to feminine.
Yeah. I was just like, I look at old leather, like Adrian Adonis. Even then, I was like, he still looks like super gay character. Like I was like, oh, that's always been his thing. Like even him as the badass biker, I was like, okay.
Well, you should look up old pictures of the Road Warriors. You should look up old pictures of the Road Warriors. You should look up the video for the Fabulous.
Are they like BDSM boys?
Well, that's more Demolition, but they were taken off of like Humongous. Yeah. So were the now the Road Warriors, like they did a lot of leather and stuff like that in their early days too. And they are the North.
Could you imagine?
What is it called? I almost said the North-South Connection, but that was Adonis and Murdoch in the WWF.
Yeah,
because the East-West Connection does have a very healthy run with the AWA tag team titles in the very early 80s.
Luzerne County's voting place got evacuated for a bomb threat.
There's a bunch in Georgia that the same thing happened.
Yeah. Yikes.
So I voted. Sorry. One of the reasons I voted by mail.
I was there first thing this morning. I got it done right away.
So the whole thing is kind of cut short with the East-West Connection because they both go to the WWF. And this is before the full court press on Vincent K. McMahon taking over. They're just moving on. Ventura is a guy, Jesse Ventura is a guy that was tailor-made for the WWF, especially when superstar Billy Graham's kind of receding. So yeah, he's not the superstar, but he can talk and he's got a great look, and they come in there and they're managed by classy Freddie Blassie as if Jesse Ventura needed a manager. But this is back in a time when every heel had a manager. Every heel pretty much either had Blassie or Albano. When he was alive, the Grand Wizard. After that, Fuji was actually still a wrestler at this point. So eventually it would be Heenan when Heenan jumped over.
Yeah.
And he had some runs with Backlund, but Jesse Ventura's run as a wrestler you would think he would have been a guy that was in prime position to really, really flourish when the whole Hulkamania thing was starting to come up. And when Vincent K. McMahon was fully taking over and doing his national expansion, because he had everything that Vince wanted. He could talk and had a great look. And Vince didn't really care if you were a good wrestler. That was third or fourth down the list of things he cared about was, can you have a good wrestling match? Yeah, who cares? It's a muscle show with promos.
Yep.
And he would do things like arm wrestling contests with Ivan Putski, who was the local babyface strongman. He would have run-ins with Hogan. I know they infamously, because this is on one of the early Hulkamania VHSs, when they came back to Minnesota, one of the tricks Vince would do is if you would poach a guy or poach a few guys, he would have them in the main events when they would come to that town. So if he stole Randy Savage from Memphis, when they're running Memphis or close to Memphis, they're going to have Randy Savage high up on the card. If he stole Rick Rude from World Class or Rick Rude from Crockett, he's going to have Rick Rude high up on the card when they come to Crockett. Big Boss Man is going to be high up on the card when they go back to the Carolinas or Virginia or something like that. So when they are running Minnesota, after they've had Hogan for a little bit, but then they poach Ventura, they poach Heenan, they poach a few other people, and Fuji is kind of easing his way into managing at this point. They infamously did a tag match in Minnesota or Milwaukee or one of those AWA stronghold places. I forget which town it was exactly, where it was Hogan and Mean Gene Okerlund against George Steele and Fuji. But after the match, after Hogan and Mean Gene win, they start to tease Jesse Ventura is going to go up against Hogan next. And he did have a few matches with Hogan in late '84, but then he goes to Vince and he says he has to retire because he has blood clots in his lungs. And he would always say that this was due to Agent Orange exposure when he was in Vietnam, which is very possible. Like that stuff really messed with people. Yeah. And he was over there. He might not have saw combat directly, but he was over there. And
I was mixing buckets full of it, Monsoon.
I was underwater blowing up the holes from the outside. So he did wind up coming back for a little bit with Randy Savage and some tag teams. He wound up, they would always tease things with him and Bruno, where they never really had a thing with him and Bruno Sammartino, but they'd always kind of tease it. But where Ventura really, really shone, he had like a 6-man tag with him, Piper and Orton, against the Scufflin' Hillbillies on a Saturday Night's Main Event. And they would always have Jesse kind of prodding at the baby faces. But the real thing where Jesse Ventura really shined in the WWF, and what he's probably best known for to this day as far as wrestling, was when he stepped away from the ring and found the role that he was born for, which was, and I love Bobby Heenan. I think Bobby Heenan is the best manager ever. I think Jesse Ventura is the best color guy in professional wrestling history. Not play-by-play guy.
No.
But as far as color commentary, because he knew when to rein it in, he knew when to be serious a little better than Heenan did.
He also knew how to be, and this is, I feel like Taz is good at this as well. I think he's better than most. Some wrestlers don't know how to turn off I'm a tough guy wrestler and be a commentator. Like, a lot of wrestlers get on the booth and they're like, "Oh, I'd kill this guy. This guy's garbage. Sure. Like, I'm better than everybody." And the Body didn't really do that. He didn't put himself over the talent. Like, if you were out there performing, he made it about you. Where sometimes wrestlers have a hard time doing that.
It's especially an issue for active wrestlers. Active wrestlers struggle with that a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think Gorilla and Body are better than Gorilla and Heenan, and I love Gorilla and Heenan. Like, a lot of when I look at my color, I pull from Jesse and Bobby a lot.
And Heenan and Gorilla were untouchable in the studio. Like, their studio stuff, when they could be like just more of a comedy team, is nothing can touch it. Nothing can touch it. But and Monsoon and Ventura really did have a really strong kind of chemistry there, because they were both ex-wrestlers, and they would both have that thing of like, I respect you, but if I have to fight you, I will. If I have to fight you, I will. So
I'll bite your ear off.
No, I'll bite your ear off, Monsoon. Listen, Gino, And I love that he just called him Gino or Morella. I don't think he was ever said Morella because he had Joey Morella as a referee, but he called him Gino Monsoon.
Yeah.
And they
in the chat, are people watching later on? I'm trying to do this a little more too to get some engagement, but in the chat, or if you're watching this later on in there, leave in the comments, who's your favorite commentary duo, and is Jesse high on your list?
Yeah, he's incredibly high on my list. He's way up there. He's way up there.
How do you rate Ventura with Vince on commentary? Vince is doable on commentary because Jesse's that good, but it's not as good as Jesse and Gorilla.
Yeah, Vince.
I don't like Vince on commentary.
He was always okay at being able to put a story over because he knew where the stories were going and the direction they wanted to push, but he was a little over the top as far as he would have been better as a color guy. But he was kind of thrusting that play-by-play role because back then color guys were almost always ex-wrestlers or managers or something like that. And Gorilla was kind of the oddity of being a play-by-play guy who was an ex-wrestler.
Yeah.
But they would always find ways to keep Jesse in the mix. He would have a lot of segments on TNT. He was one of the original hosts of Primetime Wrestling before they put Heenan in that role. He would do a lot of backstage interviews and commentary on Saturday Night's Main Event. He had his own interview segment called The Body Shop. When Roddy Piper went babyface, they would have Jesse do the heel commentator thing. And he was very, very good at that. He was very, very, very good at that. And
Ryan Vox says Jesse and JR is underrated. I also believe the JR gimmick was all Jesse's idea.
Interesting, because I know Jesse was in WCW by the time Ross was JR in WWE, but who knows? Yeah, maybe that was the thing. I always felt that in WCW, Ventura had much better chemistry with Tony Schiavone. I thought Ventura and Schiavone, they were one of those commentary teams where even though they were kind of antagonistic, you could tell they liked each other. And you could tell they had like a bit of a rapport that way. Which kind of like Ross and Lawler. Ross and Lawler always had that for me.
Yeah.
And that was and Ross was very good at reining in Lawler to a degree, even though it was the Attitude Era, so everything was over the top. Everything was a little bit wild. And so Ventura runs into a little bit of an issue though at WrestleMania 2. At WrestleMania 2, he has WrestleMania 1, it's Ventura and Monsoon on the call, but WrestleMania 2, they were all over the place. You got to remember, WrestleMania 2 is where you had people in 3 different things. Like it's Vince McMahon and Susan St. James in New York. And I remember Ventura and Elvira were in LA, but I forget who was with them. It might have been like Craig DeGeorge or something, because I think Monsoon was in Chicago, but I don't remember or anything like that. It's funny with the whole thing with JR and with Schiavone and Ventura. I remember now. I was just watching one of the old Halloween Havocs for last week. I think it was 93, because by 94 Heenan's in there and Ventura's kind of gets shunted to the back, and by 94 Halloween Havoc, Hogan's in and Ventura's out of there. So after Hogan came, we'll get to that later, but after Hogan came to WCW, Ventura's gone, and we'll get into why in just a second here.
Yeah.
But there is a thing for the announcers. That was a Ventura, Elvira, and Lord Alfred Hayes. So I forget what Jesse was wearing. He was wearing some kind of, I think he was wearing like a Bill Clinton mask or something. And then Schiavone was dressed as Jesse Ventura. He had like a bald wig on and a painted on goatee, and he was doing a Ventura impression. He could just tell they were having fun with it. They were just having fun with it. And Ventura was a guy, I don't know if he was the first, but he was definitely a guy who I think Piper may have done this in like Mid-Atlantic, or there may have been some people elsewhere. But Ventura was a guy who really, really made the heel commentator a thing. Really, really popularized the idea of a heel color commentator. And at a point where a lot of people are neutral, and a lot of, especially Vince and Gorilla. That's why he worked so well with those two, because they were just cheerleaders for the good guys. Ventura was a cheerleader for the heels. And
he also wasn't afraid to make an idiot out of himself too. Like he was like dressing weird and dressing flashier, doing silly things. Like
he knew how to be over the top, and he knew how to be over the top, and he knew how to really, really be a guy who would get himself over. He knew how to get himself over as an announcer, and he knew how to stand up for himself. And he knew his worth, which not a lot of people did back then. To the point where we just talked about WrestleMania 2. We just talked about Ventura and Hulk Hogan. They were kind of close. They were both like bodybuilder guys. They had both come up in the AWA. They had some common ground there. However, as WrestleMania 2 is coming along, Jesse Ventura is like realizing, the WrestleMania 2, there's a lot riding on this. This is our perfect opportunity to get a union here in the WWF. And he's reaching out to people. He's trying to, because if we say, hey, we're not going on without a collective bargaining agreement, if we all unite, there's no WrestleMania 2. They could still do that to this day. You could do that right now. People in WWE, they're not going to, but you could still do it. You could be an after SAG. They're not going to.
No, definitely not.
But
cowards.
But they don't know how to stand up for themselves. It's all because of Hogan. So
Hogan stooged me out.
That's exactly what Hulk Hogan did. And I know this was part of that Mr. McMahon documentary, but Ventura was trying to organize meetings to get this union going, and Vince caught wind of it, and that was that. That was into that. Ventura was kind of forced out a bit there. However, there was such demand for him, especially with Saturday Night's Main Event. Dick Ebersol really wanted them on there.
I found this photo real quick. I wanted to post it real fast. So this is for the audio listeners. Sorry, go check us out on YouTube. But just fucking Jesse, like,
he was great.
He's a mad doctor, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it wasn't Bill Clinton. It was just the mad. That's the one I was talking about. Yeah. He was just like I
gotta step away real quick to use the bathroom. Are you good to be solo for a moment?
Oh yeah, totally. Let's go for it. So yeah, we're gonna talk about the return of Jesse Ventura. He wasn't really out of the picture that long because of the unionization thing. He had enough of a name for himself, and he was enough of a star, even as an announcer, where he kind of was able to get back into things. But he was also always having an eye out for projects outside of the WWE. He was always somebody that was very business minded. There's a guy now who doesn't really get a lot of notoriety as a household name, but he's somebody who is incredibly important to pro wrestling to this day. A guy named Barry Bloom, who was the first and for a while the only talent agent who would represent a lot of pro wrestlers. He was Triple H's agent, may still be. He was Goldberg's agent. He was a lot of people's agent. And his first client in professional wrestling was Jesse Ventura. And he negotiated a lot of good deals for Jesse, and a lot of deals that would wind up becoming issues later. In 1987, he gets a deal in his contract where he was able to, or he tried to get a deal for royalty rights for videotapes, but he was told that only feature performers get them. Although he would later find out that wasn't true, and he would sue, and he would wind up winning millions of dollars from the WWF in the 90s, in a point where they were just getting hit with lawsuit after lawsuit and legal issue after legal issue between the George Zahorian thing and the Chuck Austin thing and a million other things. But Jesse's also looking to go beyond pro wrestling in the late 80s. He has a huge feature role in The Running Man and Predator in 1987. And that's where he does meet another future governor in Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they are both huge parts of a huge movie that is still having sequels made to this day. And works with Arnold again in The Running Man. We're talking about Jesse and the Governator, another politician, I believe he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. I know he inducted somebody in the Hall of Fame, but he had a few appearances there.
Yeah.
And I
do imagine going back and just sorry to cut you off. You mentioned going back and like watching Predator, and you're like, two of these guys are gonna run office one day. You're like, get the
Carl Weathers and the Alien. Yes, I'm all for it. Carl Weathers and the Alien.
Yeah, didn't see that coming.
And he does take some time off. He doesn't do a whole lot of commentary in '88. He takes some time off to shoot some movies. He winds up being the special referee for the Mega Powers and the Mega Bucks at the first SummerSlam. But he does stick around WWF for a little while. He even did some football. He even did some football.
Jesse's not in the Hall of Fame? I guess that makes sense.
No, Ventura's in there. I believe Ventura went in the first year they brought it back in 2004, I want to say. The one before WrestleMania 20, I believe that class had like Bobby Heenan, Greg Valentine, Ventura. I want to say he's in the Hall of Fame. Yes, tag team. Yeah. So
what?
That was...
Wait, there's a TV show where Jesse and Piper play cop wrestlers?
I believe it was a pilot, and they aired the pilot as a movie. Yeah, Ventura is in the WWE Hall of Fame. Ventura is also he was the best color commentator in the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards from 1987 to 1990. He won the Frank Gotch Award from the George Tragos Luthez Hall of Fame. But yeah, there was, I remember seeing this. I remember seeing this when it came on. I forget what network it came on. But yeah, so after Predator, after Running Man, after No Holds Barred, he was also in a movie called Repossessed, where it was like a spoof movie, like Naked Gun, or like a Scary Movie, or one of those, where it was making fun of The Exorcist, and it was like an adult Linda Blair, and Leslie Nielsen was the priest. And as he's trying to do the exorcism at the end of the movie, Ventura and Mean Gene Okerlund are just calling the action, which is a fun thing. But yeah, so in the early 90s, he does a pilot called Tag Team, where he and Piper, are wrestlers who are also cops, which I don't remember a whole lot of it, but it was definitely a real thing that really happened.
What a missed op. That's a great. I have to look that up. I really want to see that.
That was also around the time he was in. I believe it was a Miller Lite ad, because I want to say he had like a gold. Right. He had like a gold bandana, and in black sequins it said "Less filling tastes great." And so yeah, he was getting a lot of work. And again, this is something I said when you had stepped away. He was one of the first wrestlers to have an agent, which helped him a lot. And his agent wound up going on to represent a lot of other wrestlers and he also had like a good relationship with Schwarzenegger. But he had a deal to do a wrestling game with Sega in the early 90s, which would have been on the Genesis. And Vince is like, no, you can only be in a WWF game. And that became like an issue. And this whole issue with royalties, where he was told that only featured performers get royalties, and that wasn't the case. And then he finds out and he sues. All of this leads to an exit from the WWF for Jesse Ventura in the very early 90s. And this is when Heenan is kind of going to fully go into the commentary mode and really step away from managing. And Ventura, he was keeping busy. There was a show, a syndicated show in the early 90s called The Grudge Match. And it would be like, oh, we're roommates and we're arguing over who doesn't do the dishes, and we're going to settle this on the grudge match. And you would have you would box with oversized gloves, or hit each other with foam bats and things like that. Or it would be in a ring, or there would be something related to it. Like there might be a sink full of dirty dishes, but they're like made of breakaway glass, and you throw dirty dishes at one another. And
so there was a bar near the Hazleton, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, I believe, that used to have amateur boxing night, where you can show up and sign up and fight your coworkers or fight your boss, or bring someone you want to fight and agree to fist fight in a boxing ring. Needless to say, it did not last long. Shocking.
I bet it didn't. Yeah, these are like if you these boxing gloves are so big you might as well have been pillow fighting.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing where they were really trying to hurt one another.
Boo.
And it wasn't what was that show they had on Bully Beatdown? Do you remember that show where they have
the local dude around us, Pat Murphy?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Pat Murphy or John Murphy? John Murphy. I think he's from Minersville, but he was on Bully Beatdown. He was a fighter. He was one of the first ones that like he was beating up the bullies so bad, and then just for some reason he wasn't supposed to, but just head kicked him and like.
Okay,
and the bully won because he head kicked him
by DQ.
Yeah, like you can't won.
He won.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the break from wrestling doesn't last too long because he does wind up going to WCW in 1992, working with Jim Ross a little bit, working with Shivani after Jim Ross leaves the company. And again, what really kind of ended that run was two things. Bobby Heenan came in, so now you have two top heel commentators. I remember Slamboree 94 because I've watched that show back a ton because I was there. And Heenan's commentary for a little bit, and then Ventura's doing backstage interviews, and then for some of them, at least for the Nasty Boys against Cactus and Max Payne match, Ventura's the commentator. And they say that he was released because he fell asleep during a taping, but Hogan was coming in, and Hogan was going to look for any reason to get rid of Ventura, and they had Heenan, and so yeah, Ventura wasn't long for that world after Heenan was there. And so at this point, and somewhere along the way, I believe it was it may have been while he was still in WWF, but he became the mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. It was, from 1991 to 1995. So it was after he had left. It was while he was working for WCW. He was the active mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. And just a little tiny town outside of Minneapolis. And he was also, I believe, on the radio. He was like, he just did talk radio for a little bit in Minnesota, like local talk radio. But by 1998, the Reform Party is a thing. The Reform Party, I just watched the whole big thing, and Ventura is a huge part of it. The Reform Party was started by Ross Perot. After the 1992 election, he did really well. He got like 18% of the vote in the 1992 presidential election. And he wound up getting a lot of federal matching funds, but he couldn't really use them unless he got a party. He needed like an actual political party to be able to use any of these things. And so he starts the Reform Party, and not a lot of people had a lot of success in the Reform Party. Jesse Ventura winds up becoming the Reform Party nominee for governor of Minnesota. I believe the incumbent governor was either term limited or was like stepping down. So you had Norm Coleman, who I think wound up actually becoming the governor later, who was the Republican. He was the mayor of St. Paul. You had Skip Humphrey, his father was like the guy in Minnesota, Hubert Humphrey. The Metrodome was named after him. And then you had Jesse Ventura, and his whole thing was these two are career politicians. These two are empty suits. I'm the only real change here. Don't vote for politics as usual. He had really out there commercials where he had like the Governor Ventura action figure, and it was like knocking out the special interest groups and things like that. And he talked about how I don't want to be Jesse the Body.
Blueprint.
He did. Well, actually, Ross Perot wrote the blueprint. He showed you could win. He showed you could win with it.
Yeah.
And he did. He shocked the world. He shocked the world and won the governor's race in 1998, I believe. He was 1998 to 2002, I believe.
Overall, has he looked as a successful governor?
No, he was. There is from what I understand, there is a reason that he did not run for re-election, and the main reason was it was pretty clear that he would have lost badly. He was a bit inexperienced. He didn't even run for governor again. But it was something where he was for a while one of the few third-party candidates. I mean, now we have two independent people in the Senate. We have Angus King in Vermont. We have Bernie Sanders or Angus King in Maine and Bernie Sanders in Vermont. And Minnesota is always one of those states where they kind of march to the beat of their own drummer. And it was close. He only won the election by like 2% of the vote, 2.5% of the vote.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he did kind of shock the world. It was a 3-way race, so that's not an insignificant amount of vote that he had there.
Yeah.
But it was that whole thing of like the wrestler, what? The Jesse Ventura, the wrestler, is the governor of Minnesota. And a lot of people thought he was grandstanding. A lot of people thought he was more worried about being Jesse Ventura, a celebrity, than actually running the state. I know he did get a lot of flack because in 1999, and this brings it back to wrestling. In 1999, he wound. Yeah, Bernie Sanders was reelected. In 1999, while governor of Minnesota, he wound up refereeing the main event of SummerSlam between Mankind, Steve Austin, and Triple H. In fact, a lot of people think that's why Triple H didn't win the title until Raw the next night. Mankind wound up winning the title because they didn't want Jesse Ventura, even though he's a heel his whole career, to have to raise a heel's hand. So that's why they had Mankind win it. And the other
butts and seats.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Butts and seats.
Well, he was only champion for a day. He literally lost the next night. And then he got even more of a backlash for later on in his term, toward the end of his term. And I think at this point he'd already kind of made up his mind and may have even announced, I'm not running again. But in 2001, he becomes a commentator for the XFL.
That's right. Hit the first season, right?
The first season of the XFL. Initially, it was him and Matt Vasgersian, who does a lot of baseball and has done a lot of baseball video games and things like that. Mm-hmm. But as it went on, he wound up they wound up putting Vasgersian on the B game, and he wound up doing XFL football with Jim Ross.
Yeah,
for a lot of that first year. And that was another thing where people got a little upset with Ventura that he was leaving the state to go call football games while he's the governor.
Who's the player or thing about the first season of the XFL that stands out for you more than anything?
Oh, he hate me easily.
He hate me 100%. It's he hate me.
and then he wound up playing for the Eagles.
Yeah,
he wound up playing, and I think he played for the Panthers for a bit too. But yeah, Rod Smart, he hate me is. Even though the other, like Tommy Maddox was a league MVP, wound up playing for the Steelers, wound up being their starter for a few years. Yeah, it's absolutely he hate me. Absolutely 100% he hate me.
He hate me and the ball are the two things that stand out for me. First season.
And the whole thing they would have to do where they would put the ball at the 50-yard line and you'd have to run to get it instead of doing a coin toss. And like the first week they did it, half the people got hurt.
Yeah,
so like everybody was separating their shoulders and stuff or breaking their fingers. Oh, the XFL was wild, especially that first XFL. And how Lorne Michaels, the guy who runs SNL, was livid with them because the second week they did it, they had all these technical glitches, and the game went into like double overtime or triple overtime because they had like college overtime rules, and the game went on forever. The game was still on almost like around like midnight. And it was supposed to be like Saturday Night Live's one of their big episodes. Like Jennifer Lopez was going to be the host of it.
It ruined the ratings.
And it wound up not going on the air. Like usually SNL, I think, was on at like 11:30. It was like well after midnight when SNL got on the air. And they say Lorne Michaels was fuming. And that was the second week. Well, like the first week the ratings are pretty good, and then the ratings started to really tank.
And then the rebrand of the XFL, I'll never forget. Like I was like, oh crap. DC's got a team, baby. They're dominating. They're killing everybody, blowing everybody out. I go to Pilgrim. I'm going to watch the XFL championship. I'm going to see Washington as a adult win a football championship, and they get blown out by one of the worst teams in the league.
Oh, football.
Like gets destroyed by the worst team in the league in the championship. Like this team shouldn't even have been in the championship game.
Yeah,
were they like 4-12 or something?
Well, that's the thing with those small leagues. Sometimes like a bad team will sneak in.
Yeah, sometimes they won the whole goddamn thing.
So
Ventura back this year?
Well, it merged with the XFL merged with the new USFL, and they now call it the UFL, and which was another league that didn't last too long. They came back, but they only kept like half the team. They kept half the teams from the XFL and half the teams from the USFL, and I lost interest because they didn't keep the Philadelphia Stars.
Did they keep DC Defenders?
I don't remember if they did or not. I believe they may have. I know they kept the XFL team I liked was the St. Louis Battlehawks. That was my team from the XFL.
Great name.
And I only like them because they have wings on their helmet. It's like it's a sword with wings, which is weird. Yeah, they're still around. It's the Birmingham Stallions, the Houston Roughnecks, the Memphis Showboats, the Michigan Panthers, the Arlington Renegades, DC Defenders, San Antonio Brahmas, and because The Rock owns the league, and the St. Louis Battlehawks. And the reigning champions are the Birmingham Stallions.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, no stars, and I'm done. Yeah, no thank you. No stars, no thank you. So and Ventura, yeah. So Ventura winds up taking that admission in the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. In 2009, when they're doing the Raw guest host era, the whole thing where they have a guest host every week, they do bring in Ventura and they have him say, I'll be in here, but I want you on commentary with me for the main event. And he has the main event commentary for the episode of Raw he's on is Ventura and Vince McMahon, and he makes Vince McMahon wear the old suit from the 80s. And it's actually it's a battle royal where the winner it's all people who have never been WWE champion before, and the winner gets a shot at John Cena at tables, ladders, and chairs in a tables match. Sheamus wins the battle royal and then goes on to beat Cena for the WWE title, and the match was set up by Ventura. But it seemed like he's almost like a Bret Hart type, where it seems like he'll occasionally do things with WWE, but he'll also take shots at WWE. But it seems like a lot of his axe to grind was more with McMahon himself than the company, because since the whole thing where McMahon has been out of the picture, Ventura came back. They say he's going to be involved with the new Saturday Night's Main Event. He's a guy that's very synonymous with that show, with the backstage interviews, of being on commentary at times. It's going to be interesting to see. I don't know how great Ventura would do on a whole show as a commentator, just because the product now is so much different. I'm sure he hasn't been paying a lot of attention to professional wrestling for the last 30 years. And he's also 73 years old. But
who does the best Jesse Ventura impersonation?
Killer Cross. Will Sasso is a close second.
Will Sasso is really good. Will Sasso could go on a full. Like, here's what makes I think Will Sasso better than Cross. Cross is like a wrestling fan, so he can quote Jesse and say old school Jesse stuff. But also, like, Will Sasso is a giant wrestling fan, but he's also has that improv skill where he can just make up a story and just do it as Jesse. I lean more towards Sasso.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Sasso's a better comedian, so he's going to be able to riff better. But
yeah,
when I first heard that Chris Van Vliet video, where he is just totally freestyling this Jesse Ventura thing, I'm like, this is incredible. Did
you see when Van Vliet had Jesse on? Cross shows up and does his impersonation to Jesse in person, and then they call in Sasso, and Sasso's talking to Jesse through the phone as Jesse.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's a lot of fun.
So good. I would just say bring Cross in for like Saturday Main Event and just be Jesse the Body Ventura.
Well, they're gonna get the real Jesse Ventura for it seems.
Yeah. Just pass the torch. Just let Cross be the new Jesse the Body Ventura.
You could do that as well. And Sasso had experience because when he was on Mad TV, at the same time that Ventura was the governor of Minnesota. They would do a lot of sketches. In fact, when Sasso did his whole thing with Bret Hart, where they did a thing setting up Bret Hart wrestling Will Sasso on Nitro, it was because they did a whole angle where Bret was supposed to attack Will Sasso on Mad TV and put him in the sharpshooter. I think threatened one of the other cast members, Deborah Wilson. I think he might have threatened her, maybe pushed her or something. But I think it all ended with her turning heel on Will Sasso for some reason. It was just one of those things where WCW was losing the war and they were just doing anything they could for publicity. So
RoboCop and Chucky and
that was way earlier. RoboCop was Chucky wasn't, but RoboCop was like 1990. Chucky was around the same time. The Chucky and Rick Steiner thing was around the same time.
All right. Anything else for Jesse, or are we about to wrap this one up?
I think that's pretty much it. What an interesting. He had a movie. They did a movie about him on NBC. Chris Kanyon was very involved in it.
Really?
I think he did the stunts. He wasn't the actor that played Ventura, but when Ventura would wrestle, it was Chris Kanyon actually doing a lot of the work with it. It was that and Ready to Rumble when they did a gimmick with him where it was like Champagne Canyon, who was a big Hollywood star, because he did the same thing for Oliver Platt in Ready to Rumble, where he was the guy who would be doing all the wrestling when Oliver Platt was doing all the acting.
Yeah. So we do have some episodes coming up. So next week on the show, we'll be doing the history of the United States Championship. So that'll be coming up next week. So we'll be doing that. Whoever books RoboCop is a genius. Ryan Vox will always love RoboCop coming out because he then booked RoboCop to come out at an Outbreak show. I just remember sitting in the crowd going, what the fuck? I was like, where did they get an accurate RoboCop suit? That was impressive. And then after, on the 12th, the history of the U.S. title, everyone get your homework ready. Dial in your peacocks and tune in to Survivor Series 1998. That's what we're going to cover on the 19th. And then the 20th. Yeah, the 26th. The day after Thanksgiving, we're going to have full bellies. We're going to be thankful. But you know what else we're going to do, Brian? We're going to lie. We're going to cheat. And we're going to steal, baby, because we're going to be doing the history of Eddie Guerrero to probably a guy we're all pretty thankful for when it comes to professional wrestling, right? That's a guy I would say in a nutshell, very thankful for his career. In December, I think I'm going to rearrange the order. And I think in December, we're going to start off with a show. And we're going to start off with Starrcade 1993. And then we're going to do the history of the Armstrongs.
That's going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And then we're going to do, because, you want a good Christmas gift. And one of the best things you can get for Christmas is gold. How about 10 pounds of gold as we cover the history of the 10 pounds of gold title? And then to roll out the new year, the 2025 or 2024 around Christmas.
No, around out 2024,
around out 2024 for Christmas. Another guy who I think is jolly and gives everyone good feelings for the most part is Mick Foley. Let's just end the year with the history of Mick Foley. He likes Christmas. He's a big Santa Claus guy, so that's how we're going to close out the year of 2024 Tornado Tag. Also, we do have some show reviews coming up. Myself and Lily will be doing the Camp Leapfrog reviews, so we're going to be doing those. Be on the lookout for those. Also, possibly this in the month of November, December, we're going to be bringing back or adding a post show to some wrestling things, or just maybe on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night where me and Lily are going to recap what's been going on in this week in wrestling. So it makes me watch more modern day wrestling because I've been really, really terrible at doing that. But BP, you got some shows coming up for November. Let's plug them.
I do. The big one is going to be this Saturday, November. I almost said September. I'm way behind. This Saturday, November 9th, PPW Engage at the Slatington Expo Center. A lot of fun stuff happening there. I was supposed to. I'm going to announce it on this thing as soon as we get off here. But I'll give everybody a sneak preview. We're going to announce a match that I think could be the show stealer tonight. I think it's the last match we have to announce. We were waiting to hear if somebody was going to make it. It looks like they're going to be doing some other stuff that's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope they knock it out of the park. But we are going to be doing a big three-way triple threat with Diego Hill, who has been wowing the PPW audiences all year. Mark Alexander, who has taken the ball and really run with it this year, and a new guy that I'm very excited to see in PPW, Christian Robinson. Diego Hill, Christian Robinson, Mark Alexander in a triple threat match.
I'm a big Christian Robinson fan. I'm going to try to get him on the podcast before the end of the year.
Yeah, no. So that's one I have circled. I have asterisks next to it. I cannot wait for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And then you'll be doing some stuff, maybe, or just possibly hanging out with AXW at on the 16th.
Brewfest, yeah. Schuylkill County Brewfest, yeah. I have to kind of hammer out what the role is going to be, if anything. I think it might really hinge on if the show is being filmed or not, which is kind of up in the air. So yes, but even if I'm there as a fan, it's going to be a great show to be there as a fan, have a few drinks, watch a few matches, and it's 5 minutes from my house, which I can never feel too bad about.
Can't go wrong with that. Can't go wrong with that. On the 16th, I'll be at New Era Pro Wrestling for the Heist. At the Falcons Nest. So come out and hang out. We're going to have some really cool stuff. Come out and support pro wrestling wherever you are. Just go out and support every weekend. Try to go see a show, support your local scene, because that's important. That's important to do. Anything else we got going on? I don't think really anything else when it comes to wrestling.
If you are super local in certain areas here, I think it's primarily if you have the Service Electric Cable Company. PPW High Voltage is back. For a while we were doing a lot of best of shows. We were kind of running the same show, our same 4 shows for about a year, or about 2 years actually. We are back with all new episodes. New episode was started this past Saturday. We have a brand new one that's going to be ready to roll this weekend.
What are you filming your skits things on? With what, a phone?
No, a camera. The camera we always use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I know this week we have a few matches from this past October on Thriller. We're going to have Dio Bando, Baby, and Jermaine Marbury is going to be one of the matches this weekend. We're also going to have Ricky Price and Havoc. That was a really good match. That's going to be on the TV show this weekend. And in the main event women's title match from last month, it wound up being a triple threat. Sammy Chaos, Danny Mo, Nahir Robles for the PPW women's title. That's going to be on, if you're local to Pennsylvania, you have access to WYLN 35. I believe it comes on Saturday at 5 o'clock, but you don't want to watch that one because you want to be on your way to Thriller, which happens at 7, or I'm sorry, to Engage, which happens this Saturday at 7. You want to actually catch that show on Sunday night at 10. So be there live for the show on Saturday and then watch it on WYLN at 10.
There you go.
Just have a PPW weekend.
Make sure you go support those companies. Go support PPW. Subscribe to them. Go support AXW Wrestling, Schuylkill County Brewfest, our Brews Giving, Pilgrim Brewing Company. Go check that out. And, of course, our friends over at New Era Pro Wrestling and High Tension Wrestling Network. Lots of good people that are working with us on the scene. Listen, at the end of the day, we're a bunch of dudes who just sit around and talk wrestling, and since then have been given amazing opportunities in this business that we don't take very lightly. BP, you got a little hardware on your side now, right? What do you got going on over there?
Yeah, it's not within arm's reach, but yes, the other tag title is here, but it's over there.
The tag title is now in BP's possession. Are you bringing it to PPW?
I don't know. I got to carry a lot of stuff to PPW,
and you don't like carrying the belt.
I don't like carrying the belt when I'm kind of not the boss, but the boss's assistant.
Yeah, you don't want to be a mark. I completely understand where you're coming from. I may have another belt in the production coming very, very soon, and then I'm done for a long time. I want my Golden Era title, so I have my Golden Era tag team. I got my Golden Era Intercontinental, and there's only one other title, so you can do your imagination. But hopefully that's going to be in the works soon, so I will have my 3 Golden Era titles. I think the only other thing I would really have to add to that would be the European Championship, because that's pretty much the only other one in that era.
Yeah, if you want to be a big D'Lo Brown fan.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Europe, so I feel like I'm justified to have it. You know.
Yeah, the UK is like kind of Europe. I mean, it is Europe, but they didn't want to really be united with them.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But that'll do it for Tornado Tag. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. Probably shoot for 7 o'clock. Getting out of work at 5:30 and sometimes staying a little later, and then coming home and trying to eat and wind down is tough. 8 o'clock I feel is too late at night, so we're gonna dial it into 7. Try to be done at least by 8, maybe run over a little bit into NXT. But tomorrow, make sure you guys check out NXT and AEW are both on the 2300 Arena show, as well as the AEW show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy yourselves. Election night. Be safe. Love each other. We can all get along, even though we don't agree on everything, unless it's racism, homophobia, or transphobia. And then you can go, I don't care. You can go fuck yourself. I can't get behind you on that. But everything else, I do your thing. Love each other. Have fun. Enjoy.
And
election night. And Thermite, as we talk about one of the first wrestling politicians of all time.
And one of the better
that'll do it for us.
One
of the better wrestling politicians. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys. Honestly, thank you all so much for continuing to support. Our numbers aren't amazing, but the ones who are always here and supporting means the world to us. Word of mouth, tell people we exist. We're really trying to stay consistent and build back up our audience. We are on all audio platforms, so if you have a moment, go over and listen or subscribe over on Spotify, Apple, whatever platform you use. And also, if you have a couple extra bucks, throw it our way for some merchandise. We got some t-shirts on TeePublic or Teespring. And if you do grab any merchandise, take a photo of it and send it to us, and we can plug you and support you and show you love for doing that on our social medias. Unfortunately, no more Discord. So if you want to check out the Discord, head over to Raz. Raz has got a new Discord. You can go do it. I don't run it no more. I don't want to run a Discord. It's a fucking nightmare. So you guys enjoy that. And that's pretty much it. Follow us on all social media, and we'll see you on the next time. Here's Tornado Tag. We're out of here.
I want to say hi to Terry, Tyrell, and Jade.